Hey, welcome to the Treehouse Athenaeum, a place to discover the tools that empower you to embrace both the beauty and challenges of personal growth. There are so many branches leading to your roots. Come on, let's explore.
Hi, Daniela.
Hi, Lisa.
Oh my gosh. I'm so excited. I'm so excited today. We are going to be experimenting, and all of y'all will be here to hear it happen or see it happen if you're watching on YouTube. And honestly, watching this one on YouTube might be the move because we have some visuals, but maybe we should actually, I should stop jumping the gun. Can you help me?
Introduce the topic. Yes, I can. We are going to be merging astrology and Enneagram because we have this theory that we have been exploring together about how your astrology and your Enneagram kind of correlate to each other. So what I have said is that astrology is the nature and Enneagram is the nurture. So astrology is what you're made of, and Enneagram is the product of is how you are made plus how you were raised. Yeah.
Okay, astrology is the nature, Enneagram is the nurture. Mm-hmm. That's so interesting. Because in the Enneagram community, there's a lot of talk about is it nature, is it nurture? And when I was getting my certification for it, they were saying it's a little bit of both. And I could definitely see that. But also with astrology, the thing that finally sold me on astrology was somebody talking about how if the moon can control the tides in all the oceans on our planet, then why wouldn't the gravitational pull of other planets affect us who are made primarily of water? And so the position of the planets in the sky at the time that you were born, I know that it seems kind of arbitrary when you're first learning about astrology, and everybody's I don't know anything about my horoscope, which is something that once you learn more about astrology, you're that's not it. But also we all start somewhere. So my theory is that things land with you the way that they do because of the placement of where things were. So for example, you are a Virgo moon and I am a Cancer moon. And so something that might be, I'm trying to think of a good example here.
No, that's a great example because being a Virgo moon, I'm practical, analytical, whatever, but your moon is your internal world. So my internal processing is type A to the nth degree, super practical, super perfectionistic, hypercritical, analytical, all of those things. And I apply that to myself. And so if you think about the Enneagram, one is about being right or good. And if I'm overanalyzing myself, then what's the end result there? One of them is that I'm overanalytical in how I'm supposed to be. And so where you are Cancer moon, and Cancer, if I didn't say Virgo, I kind of explained Virgo. Cancer is more emotional. It's more intuitive. It's more nurturing and caring. Cancer is ruled by the moon, so all the moon archetypes are attributed to Cancer. And so Lisa having that internal perspective with the Cancer flavor leans more into the feeling triad. So if I saw someone with a Cancer moon, I might assume that they're in the heart triad, which is going to be 2, 3, or 4, and Lisa's a 3. So it makes sense. It makes sense in my head because something that pings Lisa might not ping me. And we could have been raised exactly the same, but we are going to react differently to it because of our makeup. And you can say our DNA, our natal chart, our astrology, whatever, we're going to react differently because of how we're made, our nature.
Yeah. Okay. I'm really glad that that's what you went with because the Virgo piece of that. So Virgo is very systems oriented, notices the details, can kind of come off as critical, and honestly, they're pretty nurturing. So to me, like with your Virgo moon, it makes sense that that inner perfectionism relates directly to a 1, right? Like a 1 is going to be the perfectionist. That's literally the nickname for it.
Yeah.
But you're still right next to the heart triad because you have that nurturing piece of Virgo in your moon sign being your emotional self. Now, I also have Virgo in my big 3, so all of those qualities apply, but for me, it's my rising sign, which is the social sign, kind of like what your outward appearance is. Some people call it the first impression sign, and I don't think it's really like, I just see the correlation because 1s and 3s often get mistyped for each other.
Yeah.
They both want to be the best, but for 2 very, very different reasons, right? So it makes sense that you would land feeling triad adjacent, but maybe be more in the instinct triad. And it would make sense that I, as the achiever, who also has perfectionistic tendencies, would have that Virgo to go with it too. So yeah. Honestly, this whole discussion is one that Daniela and I have had several times before Treehouse was even born. And it's the basis for the whole thing here. So we're going to test that out and really kind of put Daniela's skills to the test.
Scary.
Exciting.
Here's we talked a little bit before we started this about, what we want to get out of this podcast, and I was like, I want to get it right. And Lisa was like, okay, Enneagram 1, like, yeah. So, but I want to be clear that if I get it wrong, it's because of me. So I think this theory is solid, but it is the my knowledge and practice being put to the test here.
Yes. Okay, so the way that we went about this was by finding a celebrity, right? Because celebrities are a good point of reference. Daniela and I had to both be familiar with that celebrity at the very least. And the person that we picked is one that both of us really love and kind of look up to. And that person is the one and only Miss Tina Fey. So we have Tina Fey's birth chart here. I know what Enneagram type Tina is. It feels weird to not say Tina Fey. She's kind of a first C, last D.
Yeah.
I can't just say Tina, or Amy. No, it's Amy Poehler.
No.
Amy Poehler,
yeah.
Tina Fey. But Seth Meyers, he can just be Seth.
Yeah.
I don't know.
It's different.
It is different.
It's Tina Fey.
Tina
I
Fey.
have to tell the story because we're here, and you had to have known that this is going to come up. But
I'm aware.
I once brought Tina Fey a side of rice, and the date is escaping me right now, but I have it saved in my phone. And so my best friend from high school is also a huge Tina Fey fan, and so I immediately texted her because she came into a restaurant that I was working at, and her daughter, I think, spilled a whole thing of salt on a side of rice, and she called me by name because of course I was wearing a name tag, and she said, Daniela, can you get me another side of rice? And I ran back to the kitchen and texted my friend and was like, whatever date it was April or March, I think it was around this time, and I was like, on April 14th Tina Fey asked me for a side of rice, and the Mean Girls, like a riff off of the Mean Girls quote. So anyway, Tina Fey will always just be Tina Fey because it's Tina Fey.
She is 5'4" of legend. I just adore her. Mean Girls was so good. And the thing about Mean Girls too, this is a tangent, is I like the way that they keep updating it, to reflect the culture at the time. So that movie came out in 2003. I cannot believe how old it is at this point, but they've done different iterations of it. The Mean Girls musical came out, and they I don't know, they just updated it. They updated it to have insults that are still insulty for the Mean Girls to be saying, but maybe not offensive because things that could fly in 2003 definitely don't fly now, and it's because we brought light to them. But anyway, the point is, Tina Fey rules. She is our non-problematic queen, and we adore her.
Yeah. Yay, Tina Fey.
Okay, so how would you like to tackle this, Daniela?
Okay, I think I just want to kind of go through her placements and houses that they're in and kind of start from there and giving some like really brief overview background to an analysis that I will pull together by the end, hopefully.
Oh, you will. And for those of you that are listening along, we're going to jump around a little bit. And we recognize that some of you have, like, there are varying levels of familiarity with both the Enneagram and astrology. Mm-hmm. So if you need a second to catch up, that's fine. That's what the pause button is for. If you just want to listen and absorb all of it, that's fine too. But Daniela and I are going to do our very best to explain in depth like what it is that we're talking about and give you some of that knowledge here. So, okay, that's my side note disclaimer. Yeah. Go ahead. Talk about
Perfect.
Your son.
It's a lot. I mean, even for us, it's a lot. I have my little like cheat sheet right here. So, even for us, it's still a lot to consider. So just putting that out there. If you're like, what's happening right now, I promise you, it'll come together by the end. Stick with it. Okay. Whoop. So, to start off...
I'm so excited!
Just to kind of lay some groundwork about her chart, if you're not looking, Tina Fey is a Taurus sun, Libra moon, Leo rising, which is already interesting to me personally because I love a Taurus. And so I'm like, of course she's a Taurus. But also because she has 3 different element flavors in her big 3. So Taurus is an earth sign. Leo, her rising sign, is a fire sign. And Libra is an air sign. And so if you kind of think about the elements and their properties, the signs have those flavors. So like all air signs have some general qualities kind of like split into different specificities. Same with fire signs, same with water signs. Water signs are known as emotional. Fire signs are known as like quick and reactive. Air signs are known for being flighty, but also intellectual. Earth signs are known for being stable and grounded. So things like that.
Yeah.
So she has a little bit of everything in her big 3, which already is kind of interesting to me because it's not giving me any like major indicators on, you know, like, oh, we're already leaning in one particular way.
Well, something that I think is interesting, and I'm glad that you started with the elements of each, is there is no water in there. That's the one that's absent. Mm-hmm. And looking through her chart, she doesn't have any personal planets. Well, that's not true. Hold on. Yes, it is. Okay, she doesn't have any personal planets that are water signs. So if we're looking at this... she's got Scorpio, which is a water sign, in Neptune, and that one is kind of generational. Yeah, it's called an outer planet, so it'll stay in Neptune for X amount of years. It's just kind of like an outer layer, might affect on a bigger scale, and I don't think it will really come into play with what we're looking at here because that is advanced astrology.
Yes.
And then the other one that she has is Pisces, which is her north node. And the reason that I hesitated and was like, okay, personal planets, because the node isn't really a placement. It is like your sign of destiny, basically. There are a few things in your natal chart that will not be planets. So like Black Lilith Moon is one of those. You'll hear the term Chiron, which I think will probably be pretty important here. That is an asteroid that talks about what your wounds are and where they live. And that has to do with the planets there. And the North Node is like, this is the destiny that you're trying to fulfill. So I find it very interesting that you're right. There are no water signs in her big 3, but her destiny is to go up and be a water sign. Ooh,
in the 8th house of all houses too, which is interesting.
Tell us about the 8th house.
Yeah, the 8th house is one of the psychic houses. It's death, other people's resources, mental health, occult stuff, but it's also, you know, it's ruled by Scorpio. So it's all of that kind of deep hidden, not hidden because that's more 12th house, but it's all of the deep kind of ooey goodness that's underneath the surface, but not in a hidden way, more of like a shadow worky kind of way, instead of like this is completely obscure or like obstructed from my view. It's the stuff that you might not really want to look at, like death.
Yeah. Well, and I mean, she's a comedian. Like, so it makes sense that that might not come as naturally to her. And it's interesting to me that that is, you know, her destiny, because your destiny doesn't have to be linked to your career. There's a different point in the chart for that we'll talk about later. But yeah, I'm really interested to see like what that means for her. Especially with some of this stuff we're looking at. So let's dig into it.
Yeah. So the next thing I want to dig into a little bit is the houses that these things are in, and also defining a little bit of what we already kind of talked about moon being your internal world. So Libra being an air sign, very charming, social, but also kind of justice oriented, also known for being indecisive. So those are the flavors that are kind of are flavoring her internal world, how she looks at herself, how she processes things. So in my head, what sticks out is, again, being an air sign, she probably is very intellectual. And we know that because it's Tina Fey. And also, she probably does or did at some point deal a little bit with indecision and, I don't want to say flightiness, but the kind of like going back and forth and settling like the scales that Libra is known for. So trying to figure out, you know, the right path, but also not necessarily, it could be interpreted in a lot of ways. So what is the right path? What is the balance of the scales? Who is it balanced towards? Those kinds of things that Libras like to mull over. So
I think she's really used that to her advantage. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, please.
But while we're still here on this subject, she really has learned how to use it to her advantage, because if you're going to be a member of Second City, which is the improv troupe that most of the SNL cast members come from, like that's basically like the breeding ground for it. And you're going to be on SNL, which we all know that's where she got her start. You have to be able to figure out on the spot how you're going to balance the scene, be really aware of everything else that's going on around you, and then be able to, again, you know, put the right weights on the scales to make the scene come to life. And that's something that we have seen a lot from her. And it is her emotional self, and we don't know Tina personally, although Tina, if you're looking for new friends, you've got two right here. They both have killer bangs. And yeah, so okay, that's what I had to say about Libra moon.
Yeah, and it's interesting because her moon is in her third house. Being a comedian, being a writer, the third house is the house of communication. It's also daily life, siblings, extended family, but I like to think of third house as communication. So it's interesting that, you know, as a Libra, as an intellectual air sign, that's also kind of sociable and charming, which I would read as funny, that's coming out in her communication, because it is. That's very evident. And also third house being daily life. I feel like a lot of her comedy is social commentary. So it makes sense to me. Her sun sign. So she's a Taurus. Her sun, hold on, where is it? Is in the 10th house, which also is funny. 10th house is career, public image, reputation. So her sun, i.e. where she shines, is in the 10th house, in the house of career and public image. So that makes a lot of sense to me. In Taurus, that tells me that she's also like kind of steady and grounded in the way that she shines. And that being so public, I don't know, I feel like maybe there's like a degree of she's very comfortable with who she is and how and like what she brings to the world. Like I feel like that's what Taurus can gift, is like a strong sense of security. So I definitely see that. And she also has Mercury in that house, which again, 10th house, public image, career, Mercury, if you know anything about mythology, because all of this to me is connected and that's how I remember all of this. Mercury is the Roman god of, it's the messenger, the Roman equivalent of the Greek god Hermes. So the messenger. So you're talking about communication again. And Mercury rules Libra, or is it Jupiter? Jupiter rules Libra.
Oh.
Libra, I'm an idiot. Libra is Venus ruled. And so is Taurus. I'm such an idiot. So
we have that whole like so at the time of recording this, 2 days from now, we are gonna have a full moon in Libra, and Venus will station direct as well. So it's just kind of funny that both of it evaded both of us, even though it's something that's been very much on our radar all week, talking about Libra and talking about Venus.
Seriously.
No, I just work here.
Yeah. So her Mercury also being in Taurus tells me that her communication and like the way that she puts thoughts together, the way that her intellectual mind works is also kind of steadfast and grounded and maybe a little bit stubborn. So that's interesting to me because I feel like within this so far, I see a lot of like sense of security and knowing who she is. And then you add in the Leo rising. Leo risings are interesting to me. It's funny, I was just talking about this. This just came up for me last week because my mom is a Leo rising and I have a couple other friends who are Leo risings, and I struggle sometimes with that energy because I also like to look at the rising sign as what you attract and how. That's how one of the people that I follow, one of the astrologers I should say that I follow, is Chani Nicholas. And if you are looking for like a very intro level to astrology, I highly recommend her book.
You were born for this.
You were born for this. Thank you. Like, she doesn't go through the whole birth chart. She goes through your sun, moon, rising, the houses, and your chart ruler, which is the ruling planet of your rising sign. So all of that can kind of indicate where your passions lie, and that's kind of the dots that she connects in the book, is that your rising sign really is there's a whole camp of people that think that your rising sign is more important than your sun sign, but the rising sign is what she says, what you attract and how, like what you're pursuing and how you pursue it. So with Leo rising, what I've kind of told myself is Leo risings are pursuing themselves. So like, because Leo is all about, Leo is ruled by the sun. The sun can't help but shine. It's just your vitality, your life force, like Leo risings have like a big sense of, how do I say, I don't want to say importance. It's not
grandiosity.
That yeah, they're just, they really take up space, and like good for them. With her having that Leo rising energy, to me, it kind of throws it off a little bit because of my preconceived notions about Leo risings. But I also know that, Tina Fey is such an evolved person, so I have to like put that out of my head because I'm like, no, she has taken this to another level and figured out how to work with sun energy in a way that works for her, because obviously that Leo, that sun energy is helping her. She is a big deal. She would be the center of attention in this room. You know what I'm saying? Like, I can't imagine her not being the center of attention in any room, and not because she's making it so, but because of the value that she adds everywhere she goes.
Yeah. And something else that I'm noticing here in the ones that we've covered so far is each of the signs has like a different, it's not modality. What's it called? The like cardinal, fixed, mutable.
Yeah.
I forget what it's called. Yeah, they're called modalities. So both Taurus and Leo are fixed, which means when they get their mind set on something, it's set there. Like, they're gonna get it done. And it's interesting to me that so Leo is in the first house, which is the house of self. That is the image that she's projecting out into the world. Taurus, as you already said, is our like career, and your kind of public appearance. And so with Taurus loving luxury and the finer things in life as much as it does, and then Leo having this reputation for being very loyal, She definitely has that star power with Leo, but the Taurus, I think, grounds it a little bit, because you're right. A lot of people do think of her as like very grounded. And have you ever seen Tina Fey on a project that sucked? No. She's very discerning. She's very discerning. And I think a lot of that is due to having Taurus Mercury, so the way that she communicates, Taurus Sun, the way that she shines on everything, and then Leo giving it that little zhuzh, you know, she's gonna zhuzh it up. It's gonna be like a little bit of pizzazz. So far what we have is that she's got a bunch of stuff going on in Taurus. She's got that Leo exterior. She's got kind of a more balanced inside life with that Libra moon. And then with the Taurus Mercury, that's her communication style as well. So if you're thinking about this, just based off of these, and we're going to keep going, but I'm just curious to know, just based off of this combination, what are your initial thoughts?
So the only thing I'm going to add on to this to kind of pull together what I'm about to say is I want to talk a little bit about the chart ruler. So your chart ruler is your rising sign's planetary ruler. Her rising sign is Leo. The planetary ruler for Leo is the sun. So the sun is her chart ruler, and where it is kind of, according to Chani Nicholas, like the area of life that you're going to constantly pursue. And for her sun is in her 10th house, and so that's going to be her career, her public life. So with that, even though she does not have any water signs to speak of right now, I feel like 3 lends to this kind of like, I'm in the public image. Well, but see, here we go. Because the motivation, what she's doing is achieving. That's not necessarily what she's setting out to do, though, which is kind of where it gets tricky with the Enneagram. So, to me...
is she not, though? Because if she's not in any sort of, like, terrible project, that's intentional. You know she gets offered these things all the time.
Oh, yeah. But that's what I'm saying. Like, with Leo, and I feel like you can't help... Even the most healed Leo, I feel like, is still gonna be a little bit thinking about their image. So to me, that reflects as 3, because 3s want to bring value. And I've seen some other takes about 3s and saying that they want to also be admired. And so that's kind of like the dots I'm connecting, is the 10th house energy, the sun being her chart ruler in the 10th house, to me feels 3-ish. But my hesitancy is that 3 is a heart sign in the heart triad. So is she really motivated by her heart? Is her core, like, is she in the shame triad? And I don't know. I think I need to dig a little bit more for that, because I mean, I guess if I were to look at it maybe opposite, everything that we just said, we've kind of said mostly in a good light, like what she's pursuing, what she's trying to do. If she does fail at a project based on this, I would think that would bring shame. Or would it bring anger? I don't see the anger yet. Where's her Mars? Gemini.
I want to jump in here.
Yeah, go for it.
Oh, Leo. I'm an experienced Leo. I've been a Leo for 35 years, and I can tell you, Leos they get the reputation of like being glam and being the spotlight because they are the sun and all this stuff. But there's that whole story about Daniel and the lion, maybe, where like he has to take the thorn out of the lion's paw. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I don't remember if that's a Bible thing or not. I was not raised on that, so I'm just going off of things that I remember hearing when I was a kid. Anyway, so Leos definitely have a big roar and like a very tender little heart, because they want to be seen as like the top of the food chain. You saw how upset Scar got in The Lion King when he wasn't chosen to be royalty. He didn't exactly handle that well. All that to say is Leo is like the water sign of the fire signs, in my opinion. Like, it's definitely the most emotional and easy to get swept up in. And with that as her rising sign, like, I want to make sure that Tina Fey gets the credit she's due for having emotions. And when she smiles on camera, she's got that cheeky little smile. She's got that I know what I said was clever smile. Like, she's proud of herself. And you know what?
Yeah.
You earned it, Tina Fey. You earned it.
Pride, definitely. And not in like a bad way. Oof, yeah. And you know what? So 3s go to 6 in growth.
Yes.
So, I mean, that kind of tracks for me with the Taurus energy. So
6s are very slow and steady because they're planners.
And so the Leo kind of pushing her out a little bit into the 3-ness, but the 6-ness kind of coming probably second nature to her because it is her growth arrow, makes sense to me. And I don't know, I can't ever, I don't see her, I've never seen her, I don't know her personally, but 3s go to 9 in stress. And so I guess I would read that as like, well, you're a 3, you can tell me. I would read that as like sitting in nothingness maybe, or like instead of achieving, you hit a plateau of, and you just kind of like loaf, I don't know.
Yeah, so 6, because I realized we didn't say it, that one is the loyalist or the skeptic. 6s are very security oriented, which is why when a 3 takes on growth, like traits of growth, they'll take on that 6 because they go from being this person that like is very checklist driven and let me just like check things off, and it's very satisfying for me to have this ongoing thing where I can just, it doesn't matter what the order is. But a 6, the skeptic, is thinking about plans A through Z, so that growth is really forcing the 3 to slow down and think through, okay, like, what does this mean if I, like 10 years down the road, if I decide to go this way? So it's kind of like a 3 catching their breath, whereas 9 is the peacemaker, and 3s will take on the unhealthy traits of a 9 because 9s are so good at being in their own little bubble. Like that's their whole thing, right? They don't want to be disturbed in terms of like what they know being rocked. They don't want the boat to be rocked. So how do you stop a boat from rocking? You sit really still and you pretend like you're not there. And that's what the unhealthy trait of a 9 is it's called numbing out, where you just kind of like turn into yourself and you don't poke your head out because no one can see you, and you just kind of stay there. Or it's this other concept of, okay, maybe you're not going to sit there and not do anything. Maybe it's a thing where you try to efficient your way through a feeling as a means of numbing it out. So in other words, I'm not going to have to feel this feeling if I pick 12 more things on my to-do list that I've got to do. And then I just won't have time to think through it. Oh no,
Yeah. I fear that I feel convinced about the 3. But I want to keep going a little bit, only because as you were talking, I was trying to like fit the other numbers, right? So,
okay.
And I have an argument for most, and that's the problem. If I were to go based off of that kind of, like what you said about Leo still are emotional, and fire signs, are emotional. It's just not the emotion that you think of when you think of emotional, or when you think of the water signs. Fire signs are fiery, and that can come off as emotional for sure. So I was trying to think of the head triad, right? Because she's got a lot of intellect and air stuff in her chart. Your Mars is like your drive, your action, your fight. The reason I said, when I said about her anger, where's her Mars sign? When you're angry, I feel like your Mars sign can kind of like show through a little bit. And her Mars is in Gemini. Gemini is another air sign. Geminis are known for the intellect. If you've heard Dave talk about how he's intellectually oriented.
He doesn't say that. He says he's cerebral.
Cerebral. Thank you. Yes. Dave is very cerebral. And so are Geminis. He is a Gemini sun. So Tina Fey's Mars. I can't believe it.
She
Tina
just felt
Fey's,
that in her ribcage.
Oh my God, she regrets asking me for the rice. That's what I just felt in my bones. She just rolled over and was like, I shouldn't have asked her. Gemini, being cerebral in the air, I'm getting so off. Okay, I almost said air triad. It's not a triad. Is it a triad? No, it's 4 signs.
Oh yeah, 4. Wait, what? Okay,
Are
so
there?
There's Libra, Aquarius.
Oh,
Yeah. Libra, Aquarius, Gemini,
3.
and yeah, it's a triad.
Yeah.
Ooh, another little connection.
Oh my God. Okay, so
This is
Geminis. It is. Geminis, the other cool thing about Geminis, and this has nothing to do with anything, but this is just a little bit of my love for Geminis, are known as the twins. And they have this like inner duality to them, which I just love. They're very intellectual, curious, like very curious people, playful kind of vibes. So that being her Mars, I feel like makes sense to me. And then her Mars being in the 11th house. 11th house is the house of friends, good fortune, community. So her action being driven towards community. And then also, I don't know, that makes sense. I feel like with her like Libra moon, I feel like that's very, I don't know, I like it. I like those two things together. I feel like it makes sense.
Yeah, and she's good with the ensemble stuff too. Like if you think about 30 Rock, right? She had Alec Baldwin and Jane Krakowski, and they could not be more different. But like the depth that she gave the characters was very Gemini like, where it's like they're either 8 or 80 at all times. Like there's that childlike playfulness and like the oh my God, how many lifetimes did you have to live to get this kind of wisdom to them? And that is how she writes. And I mean, think about like Mean Girls. That is an incredible ensemble cast. Like, yeah, it's supposed to be mainly about Katie Heron and Regina George, but then you've also got the rest of the plastics. You've got Damien, you've got Janice, Tina Fey herself as the teacher. Like, it's a really good ensemble thing, and I appreciate the way that she doesn't leave anybody behind like that. And I think a lot of that comes from having Gemini in her 11th house of community. She's like, everybody get a buddy, come on in. And that's how she's taking action with Mars.
And that drive towards friends and community too, and like the ensemble for sure. So I don't know, I think like if I were to try and shoehorn her into the head triad, I don't necessarily feel like she would be a 6, which no one knows this, and no one would know this if I wasn't about to say this, but we have done this before. We recorded a version of this without Tina Fey. We used somebody else who I already forgot. Who was it?
Amy Poehler.
Amy Poehler, how could I forget? In my head, I was like,
embarrassing! You're killing both of them!
Oh my God. Well, in my head, I was like, it was Amy Poehler, and then I was like, no, it wasn't Amy Poehler. That would be too perfect. But here we are. So,
well, it is, and quick side note, the only reason I know this, any of their Enneagrams, is because Amy Poehler got obsessed with the Enneagram and made everyone take it. And then she had like a birthday party where she was like, okay, let's talk about our Enneagrams. And I was like, my queen.
I want to be friends. Okay. So,
let us in.
Okay, the reason I brought up Amy Poehler and that other podcast that never saw the light of day is because I got it wrong. And not only did I get it wrong, and that's, to be fair, not why it didn't see the light of day, but I remember saying she's definitely not an 8, and then she was. So, me sitting here being like, I definitely don't see her as a 6. I feel like I'm dooming myself a little bit, but I'm going to continue. So,
one more thing, Daniela. Why did I say it like that? To be fair, in your defense, they like none of the types are gendered, right? Like anyone of any gender can be any of the types. However, people do associate gender with two numbers in particular. One of those numbers is 2, and that's talking about how a lot of women mistype as 2, or people that were raised as women mistype as a 2 because you have that maternal instinct. I'm so interested to see how this goes in future generations, by the way, because I don't think kids are being raised like this anymore. At least it's changing. It's changing. Yeah. Okay, so 2s are the more feminine, and 8s. Most people associate that with men because men have traditionally had the stage, 8 being the challenger, 8 being the one that wants to have control over their own destiny, and 8s, I mean, like who has had the opportunity to have control over their own destiny for millennia? Men. Yeah. So I understand why you may have ruled her out, and that's the nurture that you were talking about earlier. You were nurtured that way, you know? It's so interesting unpacking our beliefs like that.
Yeah, wild.
Okay,
well,
but you don't
also,
think she's...
Yeah, I was just going to say, to add on to that, because I feel like I think mostly about the more negative parts of all of these things. Like, I've had to train myself to think about the positive because I am so quick to be like, oh, your trauma is definitely this. And then it's like, okay, that's also not the only way to distinguish someone's Enneagram, you know, like maybe lean away from the trauma, Daniela. So when I think
funny because I'm the opposite.
I know, like, which is why I love
Yes,
which is why I love talking Enneagram with you, because I know you're going to hit me with the other perspective, and I need that because in my brain I'm like, oh, you would be in the fear triad. I can see that fear living inside of you. I see it. And meanwhile, like you're like, fear. Oh my God, yeah, you are so loyal. You're so great as a 6. Of course, you're like the planner with your little Mary Poppins bag. And I'm like, oh, right, yeah, all of that too.
Yeah. By the way, Scorpio and Leo are often described as like opposites in astrology. Scorpio wanting to explore the underworld and Leo wanting to be like, hello, I'm going to shine all over everything. We've already talked about plenty of Leo today, but yeah, it just, it fits, you know, this stuff just fits. It works. It makes sense.
It does.
Keep going.
We don't have shadows without sunlight, you know? So, yeah.
Yeah, the absence of the light is a necessary part, quoth Jason Mraz.
Yes. So, if I were to try and fit her into the head triad, I don't see her as a 6. Only, I mean, okay, let me come back to that because I'm already arguing my way out of that. But as a 5, I can maybe see her as a 5. I can definitely see her wanting to be competent. I can see her wanting to be capable. I think maybe to convince myself out of it, I feel like she is. So she is competent and capable. And if I were to go on the negative side of that, I think maybe it could be argued that her Leo sun would, you know, based on her nurture, could be seen not wanting to be incompetent instead of wanting to be admired. She wants to be competent. That's another one again. And I'm going to say the same thing about 1. I can see this energy being channeled into, I want to be good at what I do. So, those are the toughies in my head.
Yeah, like 1, 3, and 5. I personally have gone back and forth between or when I was learning more about Enneagram, I was like, am I a 1? Like, I am really a perfectionist. Am I a 5? It drives me nuts when I'm not like the best at something immediately. Like, I hate feeling incompetent. I hate it. I hate it so much that one time a friend of mine said that he had a note about me saying, it was just a direct quote saying, I like to be competent. Lisa. And I was like, oh, good. That feels great. And in that moment, I was like, oh, yeah. Well, I'm triggered by the way that he perceives me.
Yes.
So
yeah.
that goes back to the 3 piece of it.
The 3. Yeah, I never doubted for a second that I was a 1, especially as I learned more. Because, again, those same things that you're talking about, I like to overcome challenges. Because, to me, that says that I don't know. It's a sense of, I guess, personal achievement, but it's not for anyone but me. Like, when I love playing video games, and if I beat a particularly hard level, I'm not about to shout it from the rooftop. I don't want attention for beating the hard level, but I feel like I'm proud of myself the rest of the day because I'm like, I did a good job. I finally did it, and it's like, anyway. So, and
cannot compute. I made everyone look at my Animal Crossing island in 2020. That's not a competitive game, but I was like, come over, look at how good it looks.
Meanwhile, yeah, and this is what I mean. This is how, interconnected, because just like astrology and Enneagram, you have a little bit of everything in you. The whole point of the Enneagram is not to say that your one type is the only part of you. You have all 9. And the same with astrology. Your natal chart, every sign, every planet is represented. It just, what is getting the flavoring. So everyone has a little bit of Aquarius in them. Everyone has a little bit of Scorpio in them. Everyone has a little bit of Leo in them. And it shines through in a particular area of your life, which are the houses. That's where it gets kind of like when you start to mesh everything together. And you're like, okay, I can see it like this because we have a little bit of everything. So putting that out there. But
yeah, think about it like a neighborhood, right? Like you have a bunch of houses. Not everybody is going to be home, right? So you can walk into this house and it's got I don't know, Gothic Victorian decor on the inside. And then you can go into another house and it's crawling with plants. The person that lives there is definitely a plant mom, right? But in that plant mom house, you might not see the plant mom. They might not be home, right? So in this metaphor, the house is the flavoring, and then the planet is the occupant of that house that is giving it direction and kind of putting in its 2 cents right there. So if we're looking at Tina Fey's chart, it's funny that you mentioned Aquarius because that house is actually empty for her. That's going to be her 7th house. 7th house is the house of committed relationships. Well, Tina Fey is married and she has kids that she's quite committed to as well. It doesn't just have to be a romantic thing. It's just your committed partnerships. And look at her friendship with Amy Poehler, right? Yeah. Look at how she still hangs out with Rachel Dratch. All of these people that she's collected are still important to her. So that proves that there doesn't need to be a planet in there to do that. But she does have the flavoring of Aquarius where it's I want to be really special, but I don't want you to, or I don't want to have to ask for it. I want you to just kind of see that I have this air about me that's so quirky and unique, and it makes sense that she would have attracted quirky and unique friends with Aquarius as the ruler of her 7th house.
That's a great breakdown, for sure.
It takes forever to wrap your head around that, by the way. If you didn't get it on that pass through, please don't beat yourself up. It's one of those things. It just clicks whenever it clicks for you.
And it takes a lot of reading and mulling things over and sending them to your friend at 1:30 in the morning and be like, I never really thought about it this way. So anyway.
And that's why we have each other.
Yeah.
Aww.
And all of you now.
Yay! Welcome. You're basically a part of our Marco Polo.
I know. This feels like it a little bit. Yeah.
I'm into it.
Okay. So if I were to move to the other head triad that I haven't gotten to, it's 7. And 7s want to seek joy. They want to have fun. They seek to be happy. They don't want to be trapped in pain. I'm sure all of that applies. No one actually wants that, whatever. But everyone wants to be happy. Nobody wants to be stuck in pain. But I think with her being so meticulous about things, I don't necessarily see... I feel like 7s have FOMO a lot. And I don't know that I would attribute that to Tina Fey. Because I do see how she is discerning and deliberate. So, I'm ruling 7 out pretty confidently. I feel confident.
I'm gonna tell you you're right on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
I would be shook.
Yeah, well, I mean, me too. So one of the concepts in astrology that we haven't covered yet is the idea of a stellium. And what a stellium means is you have 3 or more planets in the same house, in the same sign. And so it just is kind of, it like supercharges it. It's like the boost to get through in Mario Kart, right? And you can see right here that she's got a stellium of Taurus in the 10th house. So she has that extra boost of slow and steady wins the race, and it's gonna look good, right? Yeah. And if not, then Taurus is also really like blankets, so I bet that she knows how to like chill hard as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so none of that is like a 7, right? 7s don't want to be buried under blankets. Like, they want to be going on to the next big thing. They want to really be kind of experimenting and getting little tastes of everything. Whereas if tourists find something that they like a taste of, they want a whole buffet of that flavor,
Yeah. And also, it's interesting. I just, moving down the list, noticed that her Saturn is also in Taurus. When you mentioned the little stellium that she's got going on in there. Saturn, if you haven't heard anything about astrology, if you're pretty new to it, you've probably heard about something called a Saturn return, and you've probably heard people talk somewhat negatively about it, and that's because Saturn is one of the outer moving planets. It moves slower, but around every 27-30 years, it returns to the place that it was on your natal chart, and normally it brings a big shakeup. Saturn is about discipline, time, structure, limitations. So, to quote one of the songs on Ariana Grande's newer album, she says, it comes back and hits you over the head and kind of makes you re-question how you've been spending your time. Saturn being the ruler, the natural ruler of the 10th house, because normally that's Capricorn, and Saturn is the ruler of Capricorn, so I know I'm kind of going off a little bit askew here. But Taurus being there, her Sun and her Saturn being there together along with her Mercury, kind of tells me that it's also flavored in a way that is, again, adds to the deliberateness. There's structure there, there's discipline there, there's a lot of intention there. And also time. I haven't really fully wrapped my head around the time aspect of Saturn. I know that time is a big part of Saturn. I don't really know how that would apply here, but it's sticking out in my head for some reason, probably just because I know that time has to do with it. So I feel like I'm going to rule out 9 also.
Okay.
I'm jumping into the anger triad here. Only because with Leo rising, 9s being the peacemaker, I feel like Leo risings, there's no way that they would just keep calm waters. Even though I feel like the Libra moon would kind of counter that. I feel like Leo rising is too strong of a placement to be completely overshadowed, though. Libra moon might balance that, but I don't think to the point where it would completely negate the Leo-ness of it all.
I think it helps with the scales, but I don't think it's a complete balance. Because, you've got the sun versus the moon here, right? The sun is significantly bigger than the moon. Everything rotates around this sun. This is a huge, huge piece of the solar system. So it's nearly impossible to overshadow that. Yeah. Even if your Leo is in the 12th house, 12th house being the one that Daniela was talking about earlier with endings and shadows and all of those other things. I happen to have a Leo stellium in the 12th house, and yet you can still fucking tell I'm a Leo. It just doesn't go away even with that kind of veil in front of it. So having Tina Fey, having hers in the first house front and center, I think you're spot on. That's really, really an important piece of the puzzle here.
Yeah. So I'm ruling out 7. I'm ruling out 9. Okay.
7s and 9s are often mistyped for each other too, by the way.
Yes. Would you lump 2s in with that?
2s and 9s are often mistyped for each other, but I wouldn't say that 2s and 7s are typically mistaken for each other. It's kind of like the the 9 is the thing that binds them in that way. Because the thing that 7s and 9s have in common is they're like, oh, that looks hard, I do not see it. And it's because the 7 doesn't want to get trapped in pain, and the 9 doesn't want the boat to be rocked. They want everything to stay the same because they know that they can rely on that. 2s and 7s, I really like struggle. Like, I guess they're both kind of like, they both have the potential to be the life of the party, because a 2 wants to be loved. So they're going to be doing, or be worthy of love. They're going to be doing whatever they can to kind of like, you know, mix and mingle and be the life of the party in that way.
Yeah.
And I think that the idea of not shaking anything up and the idea of wanting to be worthy of love often gets conflated, because you might keep someone around in your life for longer because you want to be worthy of love, and you might not be if you leave them behind. And if you let go of someone in your life, then your shit's disturbed. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm really glad you asked that question. That was a good question.
Thank you. So, speaking of 2s, do feel somewhat confidently that I'm going to rule out 2s as well. I see what you're saying, and I fully hear you about the energy of 2s have a look at me energy too. I think an evolved 2 might not as overtly have a look at me energy, and I just am dead set in my head that Tina Fey is an evolved version of whatever she is. So I feel like I'm looking at like one of the best iterations of this of this Enneagram. So I feel like I don't necessarily see, with all of her 10th house energy and her Leo rising, that she's necessarily dead set that her life path is to help others, and be of value, of service to other people. I think it is, and not in a bad way, it's a little bit more internal to her. It's a little bit more personal to her. Like, this is her, she is the star of the show here, and not because of what she's doing for other people, even though we definitely get to benefit from it. I don't know that I would say that her core motivation is to do things for people.
Oh, but she also understands like
the value.
The value. The aces in places. Is that a kitchen term exclusively? Did you ever hear that?
I've heard the term, but I didn't know it was kitchen related.
Well, the first time I ever heard it was working in a kitchen, but basically it's saying like, you know who is good at what, and then you put them there. So like, if you have someone that's really good at the grill, and you know you have a busy night where it's like Valentine's Day and everybody's coming in with steaks, like you're not gonna put the newbie on the grill to do the steaks. You're gonna make sure it's like your best steak cooking person. Yeah. And Tina Fey knows who cooks her steaks, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm ruling out 7, 9, and 2. Okay. I still feel pretty strongly about 3. 3 is still where I'm leaning most, but I have also lumped in 5 and 1 now. 4. We haven't really talked about too much. 4 strives on authenticity. I just don't see the normal markers of a 4 in this, which to me would be like an Aquarius placement. So
kinda, yeah.
Something to be like, so the focus on herself, Leo rising, I would say, can be attributed to a 4 of kind of focusing on how you're being perceived. Again, I feel like I'm leaning towards 3, but 4's kind of thinking about their authenticity, how they're being kind of like, if other people find significance in them. I feel like maybe Leo can be kind of morphed into that depending on the environment. But I also feel like I don't see the moodiness and broodiness in her of a 4.
She doesn't appear to be like chasing a missing piece either. Like she comes off as someone who feels very complete and sure of herself in that way.
All of that Taurus.
Yeah. So, and that is very 4.
Yeah.
So before you make your final guess, we are not going to get to all of the planets today, right? Because we did talk about how some of them are outer planets, more generational. They aren't going to have as big of a bearing. So like that Scorpio Neptune that we talked about earlier, not really. Like Libra, Uranus, that one is like, okay, how are we going to shake things up? So there might be some correlation with her moon there since it's in the same sign, but for the most part, not going to worry about it as much. And the 2 that we have not touched, Jupiter is, how you do your luck. how you get your luck. And that one is kind of like really in the middle of things. Like by things I mean the inner and the outer planets.
But also being in that same house with Uranus and her moon is interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. The two that we haven't gotten to yet, neither of them are planets. One of them is Chiron, which I talked about a little bit earlier in the episode, and the other is midheaven. And the reason that midheaven is important, particularly to this discussion, is because midheaven is like your career. It's like what you are destined to do. And both her Chiron and her midheaven are in Aries. So the thing that she is trying to heal, it can be assumed that it'll be done through work because both of those things are in the same sign. So if we're looking at her chart right now, it looks like Aries is in the 9th house being like philosophy and travel, basically like the Sagittarius kind of qualities.
Higher education, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Aries is also kind of emotional in that they're still a fire sign, so they're still going to be going forward. Aries wants to be the best. However, Aries is baby. Aries doesn't want to hear that. Yeah, that's like my favorite thing. Aries is baby. And it's like, but it's similar to Aquarius, where it's like, they don't want to have to be the one to tell you that. They just want you to know, like, and recognize that they are the best. And Aries can often, like, get really fired up about something, and then you kind of duck and cover and they flame out and then they're over it. Like it never happened a lot of the time. So to have an Aries midheaven and an Aries Chiron, where maybe she can get over things more quickly, where she can churn things out more quickly when she needs to. She can pivot. Both of those things tell me that she can pivot pretty easily. I definitely think that those two things would factor into the overall assessment here. So I'm going to hand the mic back over to you.
Well, with that, I heard a lot of keywords for a 1 and 3. Dang it. Okay. Aries wanting to be the best. Her Chiron in the 9th house in Aries also kind of tells me that there is a little bit of a wound with maybe in like, I don't even know how to synthesize this in my head, but like initiation. So my Chiron's in the 5th house, which I feel it. Obviously, it's, you know, my chart or whatever. But like, for me, that's creativity. House? Yeah.
No, what is the 5th house? Can you tell us?
5th house, yeah. 5th house is creativity, pleasure, fun, the house of children. It's all about like things that bring you joy, but also like all about creation. And so I do tend to have a little bit of an inner struggle with, and I think it's because of my perfectionism with creating things, creativity, because I want it to be perfect. And we all know that perfectionism is like, what's that saying, is the inhibitor of progress or something like that. I don't know. But it does tend to kind of like stall my creativity because I don't even want to do it. I don't even want to attempt if I'm not 100% sure on this like idea, because I feel like that is so out there for criticism. So for Aries, Chiron in the 9th, I'm just like, with philosophy and with like higher education, religion, law, travel, all of these kind of like more lofty things, the Chiron being there, I don't know. I don't really know how to like super synthesize that in a way that I've synthesized mine, if that makes sense. Like it feels a little more obscure. And then being in Aries, knowing that Aries have to come in first, initiate a lot, are very driven, fiery, quick people. The Chiron throws me a little, but I still feel 3-ish.
Is that your final answer?
I don't know. Okay. What are the ones I haven't talked about? 8. I don't necessarily see this as like needing control over destiny. So I'm going to rule out 8 as well.
I think that's the only one you haven't covered.
Yeah. You know what? Screw it. I'm going to say 3.
And I'm going to say you should always trust your intuition. You were right. She's a 3.
Oh, that's so exciting. I feel like I just want a game show.
You did. You did. When you got it that early, I was like, Lisa, please control your face. Because I was so proud of you. And the other thing that we were talking about before we started recording is I put together this like graphic with her chart this morning, and I sent it to Daniela, and I was like, if you want to look at this ahead of time, go for it. But let me tell you, I have no idea how to get to what she is looking at this chart. And then you figured it out in the first like 3. It was amazing.
That is what I second guessed myself so much, because I was like, this seems so obvious to me. So I want to hear your thought process. You already knew, but why did you think that it was going to be harder to get there?
The Taurus stellium is what threw me off the most. That slow and steady piece of it, and really taking your time. But like what you said about the growth arrow and that being in 6 with that connection, I think that was a missing piece that I hadn't thought about yet. And one of the other things that I was fixated on, that we actually didn't cover at all, was her Venus sign. So you'll hear people talk about a big 5, and big 5, big 6. Venus is one of the personal planets, but we didn't go over it because Venus is like beauty and love, and it's usually like a lot more personal. So just like how we didn't necessarily stay too long on the moon part, it's really hard to speculate on Venus when we aren't a part of her day-to-day life. Like, yes, we see how her art comes out. We see the duality of it in Venus, the way that, or in Gemini, I mean, in the way that we described with like Alec Baldwin and Jane Krakowski. But I was just like, Gemini Venus, man, like what, like to me, I was like, that's kind of pointing towards 7, because Geminis, I think, can slide into that 7 slot a lot more easily. And I was seeing a lot of that air sign too. But I think the reason that I got in my own way on this is because I have so many things in common with Tina Fey. That strong Leo presence, and being a 3. Right. So I was like, is this bias? Am I just like, is there, because I already knew what she was. So I was like, am I going to steer it away from this just because I am a 3, because I do have strong Leo placements? Do I want to see myself in Tina Fey? Well, yeah, duh. Like, that's a great thing to aspire to. But I was hung up on the Venus part of it, and I was hung up on mitigating my own bias.
Well, and this is such a great point to kind of wrap up on a little bit. This is what I love about this kind of, I don't know, theory. What are we calling this?
It's an experiment. It's a theory. It's something I want to dive into.
Firstly, before I say this, there are so many elements to astrology. In the same way that we say that like sun sign astrology isn't everything. If you only know sun sign astrology, meaning if you only know like your sign, so that's your sun sign. Like if someone's like, what's your sign? That's your sun sign. If that's the only thing you know and you don't feel particularly drawn or like seen by the description of your sun sign, there's probably some other things in your chart contributing to why you might feel that way. And so it's important to kind of take in all of astrology. But astrology is really complicated. So there's a lot to learn. There's a lot to kind of like get a baseline familiarity with before you can even start to analyze these things. And there's so much more depth than we even got into. All the lines that you see on the chart here are aspects. So things can be in trines, things can be in squares, and trines are typically like favorable opportunity kind of thing. Squares is typically like challenges. So the way that these planets interact with each other on your chart also has an influence on how that manifests in who you are. So all that to say that you can't just say, oh, well, she's a Scorpio, so that's why she is the way she is. There's a lot more underneath that. So that preface being said, I think that there are some things that are
so on brand.
There are some things that I feel like are really like strong indicators. Like Leo, I think is always going to make me feel a little bit more 3, a little bit more in that kind of like image shame triad, something that's going to be more concerned about their image. A Cancer moon is going to be a big indicator to me that they're in their feelings. So I'm going to put them in the heart triad in my head. These are light correlations. They're not hard set formulas. And it's because you have to kind of take into consideration the entire picture, which is complicated, but people are complicated.
They are, and that's why Enneagram, like I'm always saying, you really don't have just that one type. You have 5 that are accessible to you easily at any given time, right? And that's like over half of the Enneagram itself. And you see these lines and these correlations within astrology as well. It's just that there are 12 of them as opposed to 9. I don't think that any one type fits neatly into any one sign either. And I think like Chiron in general is just one of the biggest clues as we're looking through things like this here. Like, you hear about Chiron and you're like, oh, it's an asteroid? Like, are you for real? Like, are you seriously gonna tell me that an asteroid affects your entire life? Well, let me tell you, my Chiron is in Cancer. It is in the 11th house. So very weepy, sentimental, very squishy about her friends and her community. And that is me all over. When I talk about like my childhood trauma and the reasons that I went to therapy in the first place. If you listen to our episode where all 3 of us were together in person, I talked about these 2 girls that I grew up with that were constantly just like railing on me, and they thought it was so funny, and they would just keep doing it until I went in the bathroom and like locked myself in there and started crying because I'm like, my friends don't like me because I'm not good enough for them. And that, like, to this day, even though it's something I feel like I've healed pretty well, it shows up in different ways. And that's, to me, that's pretty undeniable. Like, that makes complete sense to me.
Yeah.
That it would be, okay, you've got your wounded asteroid is sitting right in the squishiest place. And I'm more likely to cry if I'm talking to a friend that I think, like, I'm not doing right by them, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've already talked about my Chiron, but it being in the 5th, and also depending on what house system, and here we go into a little bit more complicated astrology stuff, but the way that you're looking at the chart, if you're looking at this on YouTube, you see on the inner circle there are numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 all the way to 12. Those are the houses. In whole house astrology, it splits them all up evenly. Each house has 30 degrees. In other house systems, it doesn't. I don't know too much about the other house systems. Whole house is what I learned about first because it made the most sense to me. But depending on what you're looking at, you're probably going to find your chart if you're just kind of Googling it on Placidus, the Placidus house system, and that doesn't split it up evenly. So I've seen both, but my Chiron shifts depending on what house system you're looking at it. And so both of them make sense to me because the other one is the 4th house. And so 4th house being family and stuff like that, like I can definitely see how my Chiron, you know, like the wound that I need to heal is lightly tied to like family life and things like that. So not that I'm coming from like a broken home or something like that. Don't feel bad for me. I just mean like it's like these are the layers that you get to pull back when the more that you learn about astrology. But I definitely feel more strongly about my 5th house Chiron because I can see it throughout my childhood. The only creative endeavor I think I've ever been like confident in is dance, and I don't know, it's just got a different vibe to it, I guess. Everything else I've second guessed, doubted, you know, not wanted to put it out, even though I enjoy the process. Who doesn't love being a little bit creative? But will I ever show you? I'm working on it. But no.
You said your Chiron was in Virgo?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So like that's another, I mean, like the house is where it lives, right? But the flavor of it is still the same. The flavor of it is still a wound around perfectionism. So, and in nurturing as well. So for that reason, I think it's okay that the houses are a little bit more flexible depending upon which type you choose. But I also find whole sign a lot more approachable. Well, we gave you a lot of information today. We gave ourselves a lot of information today. So treat yourself to 8 ounces minimum of water. Treat yourself to a deep breath or 5. And thank you for hanging with us. And you know what? If you happen to know Tina Fey and you want to send this podcast to her, we'd love that. But anyway, thank you so much for being here, Daniela.
God, the pleasure was all mine.
It was both of ours.
Yeah.
We're very cute. We love you.
Yes.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for joining us in the treehouse today. We were so happy to have you. Hey, if you enjoyed your time here today, could you do us one little favor and pass this on to someone else who might enjoy it? We appreciate you so much. See you next week.